What you probably didn't know is that Jesus said that first. With great power comes great responsibility. Jesus said it just a little bit differently, but he said the exact same thing. It's recorded in Luke chapter 12. It says, "From everyone who has been given much, much will be required. And to one who has been entrusted with much, even more will be expected." Same thing, huh? Now, today we're going to be talking about responsibility. Starting out a brand new year, good time to talk about responsibility. And if you want to go ahead and turn on your Bible to Matthew 25. We'll be looking at a passage there which talks about our responsibilities. And we're going to take it, and then we're going to go a little bit different direction. And can we get the house lights up just a little bit here so I can spot the ones that are falling asleep? It's really important to us, so I can embarrass you if that happens. So also the lights, if it's dark, it makes it easier to fall. It's a lose-lose. So anyway, let's go ahead and read this passage in Matthew 25. And I think I'm going to show you something you may not have noticed about this passage, even if you've known it pretty well. Start in verse 14. "Again, the kingdom of heaven can be illustrated by the story of a man going on a long trip. He called together his servants and entrusted his money to them while he was gone. He gave 5 bags of silver to one, 2 bags of silver to another, and 1 bag of silver to the last, dividing it in proportion to their abilities. He then left on his trip. The servant who received the 5 bags of silver began to invest the money and earned 5 more. The servant with 2 bags of silver also went to work and earned 2 more, but the servant who received the 1 bag of silver dug a hole in the ground and hid the master's money. After a long time, the master returned from his trip and called them to give an account of how they had used his money. The servant to whom he had entrusted the 5 bags of silver came forward with the 5 more and said, 'Master, you gave me 5 bags of silver to invest. I have earned 5 more.' The master was full of praise. 'Well done, my good and faithful servant. You've been faithful in handling this small amount, so now I will give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together.' The servant who had received the 2 bags of silver came forward and said, 'Master, you gave me 2 bags of silver to invest, and I've earned 2 more.' The master said, 'Well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful in handling this small amount, so now I will give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together.' Then the servant who had the 1 bag of silver came and said, 'Master, I knew you were a harsh man, harvesting crops you didn't plant and gathering crops you didn't cultivate. I was afraid I would lose your money, so I hid it in the earth. Look, here's your money back.' What kind of response you expect? But the master replied, 'You wicked and lazy servant.' That was harsher than I thought. If you knew I harvested crops I didn't plant and gathered crops I didn't cultivate, why didn't you deposit my money in the bank? At least I could have gotten some interest on it.' Then he ordered, 'Take the money from this servant and give it to the one with 10 bags of silver. To those who use well what they're given, even more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But from those who do nothing, even what little they have will be taken away. Now throw this useless servant into outer darkness, where there'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth.'" Serious harsh. And the first thing I want you to see, and it might be subtly different than what you think of, because a lot of times we think of God judging us, that God's going to bring us in front of him, and he's going to go through and here you did this wrong, and this wrong, and this wrong, and this wrong, and zap, 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 right? That's not what happened here. And the lesson I want you to get to start with is individuals are responsible. Don't write this isn't one of your notes, this is something blank. Individuals are responsible for what they could do with their opportunities. What they could do with their opportunities. In other words, God looks at you and says, this is the potential. Matter of fact, let me show you an example out of Corinthians. Paul's talking, and he's in a place called Macedonia. Let me get the position right. He's in Macedonia, which is basically northern Greece. And while he's in Greece, he's writing a letter to Corinth. Corinth is southern Greece. So he's not really far away from these people while he's writing. This is not like he's saying, writing to Colorado, okay? He's writing to somebody in Raleigh, okay? And he says, "After I go through Macedonia, I'll come to you, for I will be going through Macedonia. Perhaps I will stay with you for a while, or even spend the winter, so you can help me in my journey wherever I go. For I do not want to see you now and make only a passing visit. I hope to spend some time with you, if the Lord permits." And the thing to see there is, he really wants to see him. This is not some passing, you've got the 2 kinds of friends and relatives, right? You got the ones when you're in town, you're going to see them. And you got the ones you're in town, if everything shakes out and nothing important comes up, I'll definitely come by and see you. right? You've got the different kinds. And this is if I'm in town, I am such a fan of yours, I want to see you, but I don't want to rush. I don't want to just go to quick dinner. I want to sit down after dinner, and I want to talk all night with you. Okay, this is that kind of relationship. And Paul is saying, I can't come to you right now because all we could do is have a quick dinner, have a cup of coffee, and I have to leave, and I'm not going to do that with you. Now let's look at why he's doing that in verses 8 and 9. But I will stay on at Ephesus, just a few miles away, until Pentecost. Why? Because a great door for effective work has opened to me, and there are many who oppose it. In other words, God has given him an opportunity to do things, and he knows that if he doesn't do it, he's failing God. Does that make sense? What he could do with the opportunity, God's going to be judging him for. He's responsible, not for just everything. He's responsible for what he could do. He's responsible for his potential. Do you realize you're responsible for the potential God put in you? That's heavy, isn't it? Because we're responsible to do and not do bad things, right? I'm responsible not to do this terrible thing. I'm responsible to be loving to my neighbor. I'm responsible. We like that. This says that the gifts and talents and passions and experiences of my life, that God has given me those, and then God places me in situations where there are needs and opportunities, and he is going to judge me based on how I use my gifts, talents, passions, and opportunities in the situations where he places me. And this is not some little thing. I don't mean to be demeaning, but it's not, we sometimes would view this as, okay, if I see this person outside Walmart and I think they need, and I don't give them money, God's going to get mad. It's not it. It's not what we're not talking about individual small actions. We're talking about life choices that take advantage of what God's allowed us and placed us in position to do. Does that make sense? I mean, if you think about me, just for example, what can I do? Not a lot. It just happens that what I do in front of people, so people think it's something special. But what can I do? One of my biggest, I can communicate. I can talk and I can put words on paper. Okay? That's what I can do. Now, God's going to judge me. Thank you, Crystal. God's going to judge me based on what I do with those gifts, talents, passions, experience that God has shaped in me. God's going to hold you accountable based on the gifts, talents, abilities, circumstances, experiences he's placed in you. Now, a lot of you aren't going to like that, are you? Because I like the concept that God judges me on my individual events. Okay, I'm at school. The kid next to me is upset. I stopped and talked to him, or I didn't. Right? This person over here needs this, and I did or didn't do it. That's not what we're talking about here. Well, that's important that you're open to that and you're doing that. We're talking about something bigger, aren't we? We're talking about God has placed things in you, and your life choices should be reflecting those in such a way that you're accomplishing what God wants to do in your life. And again, two things real fast. This is not about salvation. This isn't about your relationship with Christ, whether you have one or not. You don't come to a relationship with Christ by doing lots of good things. I'm reading a biography of Jerry Lee Lewis, the early rock and roll and country music guy. And he was tormented. He's still tormented his whole life because he thinks he's supposed to be trying to earn God's favor. And it's kind of discouraging to read somebody who's that torn up about the fact that he's wanting to earn God's love. It's like, no, God loves you. You can't even, you're not even powerful enough to make him not love you. You can't do that. You're not strong enough to make God not love you. The question is, do you have a relationship with him based on the fact that you've accepted what Jesus Christ did for you? God knew you couldn't earn your way to him, so he sent Jesus to you to bring you to God. Does that make sense? So it's not about salvation. I'm going to be earning it. It's not like you're going to go out there today and you're going to do something wrong and God's going to say, okay, you're out, sorry. And it's also not like you're going to go out there and you're going to see something where you could help somebody and choose not to, Or you could tell somebody about Jesus and you choose not to, and God says, "Oh, sorry, you're out." That's nothing to do with salvation, nothing to do with your relationship with God in that way. It's not about God zapping you, God looking for opportunity to go, ah, ha, ha. Because we always picture God judging, because we picture God judging the way we judge. And we tend to judge harshly. And so we put that on God. I think a better way to picture how God judges you based on what you do with your gifts and talents and passions would be, did you have a teacher in school who just believed in you more than you believed in you? Somebody who they just sold out, or any adult in your life who when you were young just totally sold out believed in you. And then you disappointed them? And you're sitting across the desk from this person who you disappointed, and they're looking at you not in anger but in pain. And they're not going, they're going, I think that's more closer to the reality. I think that's closer to how God will view his children when they stand before him. It's not looking for ways to, it's like, man, I gave you such opportunities. I gave you these talents. I gave you these passions. I gave you that experience that maybe you didn't even like. Maybe you hated that experience, but I gave it to you as a gift. I allowed it in your life as a gift so that you could do these things for me, that you could live into the person I've called you to be, that you're designed for, so that you could find your fulfillment, because your fulfillment, by the way, comes as you live into being the person God designed you to be and do the things he designed you to do, and as you advance his kingdom and his work and his restoration on earth. Does that make sense? So when it comes down to it, you're going to be held accountable at some level for what you do with what God's given you, the same way these guys were. Now, let me take it one more step, because I don't want to stop there. I want to just give you that, then move to the next piece of the concept. I don't know if you now know individuals are responsible. Do you know nations are responsible for the opportunities God gives them to, for what they could do? You go through the Bible, you'll see over and over, nations are being held accountable because God gave them an opportunity to do the right thing, and they chose not to. God gave them potential. I'm only going to touch on this for just a second, but I want to point something out to you. If you're a history buff, or if you want to just go back and history buff yourself a little bit, it's not a bit outstretching it to say America is the most powerful nation on earth, and one of the most powerful nations that's ever been on earth. Do you know when that started? In 1776, we were not the most powerful nation on earth. 1812, we were not. The 1860s, we definitely were not. Two things happened in America about the same time, in the late 1800s. First, America became the #1 mission-sending country in history. We sent missionaries everywhere in the world to reach people for Jesus Christ. There was the mission movement we think of now, where people go and spend their lives in another country. That didn't start until the 1800s. It started a lot in England, and then it came to America, and America was the #1 mission-sending country in the history of the world. Might still be, but it's iffy now. Second thing happened, and I'm not sure exactly where you'd put it, exact moment, but you could date it from the Statue of Liberty going up. Because the Statue of Liberty goes up, and it says, "Send me your tired, your poor, your wretched refuge, yearning to breathe free." And said, we're going to take care of the poor. We're going to take care of the immigrant. We're going to take care of the people who are hurting. We're going to take care of people who are weaker than us. You take those two events, and you chart them out, and you will see America's power rise exponentially from the moment we started doing those two things. Wonder what will happen when we quit that. Just food for thought. Because nations are responsible for what they could do, like being the richest, most powerful nation on earth, what they could do with their opportunities. That's not my point today. I just threw that in. Because I want to go to the third one. And third one, if you want to take notes, this is the first note you need to fill in, your first blank. Churches are responsible for what they could do with their opportunities. In Revelation chapter 3, Jesus is speaking to one of the 7 churches of Revelation. He says in verse 8, "I know all the things you do, and I have opened a door for you that no one can close." I've opened a door for you. I've given you an opportunity as a church. And the implied obvious thing is, I'm holding you accountable for the open door that you have. And what I really want to talk about today is not you as individuals, although I dug in that just a little bit to give you a taste of it. Not as how it applies to nations. I want to talk about how this parable applies to us as Spout Springs Church. How it applies to us as a group of people who are responsible for what we could do with the opportunities God gives us. And let's be honest about this. The opportunities God has given us are extreme. It's crazy, the opportunities God's given this church. Now, we talk about, one of the things we talk about that's almost a negative, but if you phrase it right, it's actually it's something God wants to use for good, and that's the fact that we have a huge military community here, which means 1/4 to 1/3 of you people are going to be gone before the year's out. Not because you're mad at me, not because you're mad at the church, because Uncle Sam said, it's time for you to go to Kansas or somewhere. Got a family moving to Belgium this year. Belgium. Why would anybody get moved to Belgium? Okay? That's a challenge, but it's also an incredible opportunity. We've referred to it as the dandelion principle for years here. Because you know how dandelion works, right? That nasty thing in your yard. It starts out as this little weed, and it grows up, and it gets rather pretty for a little bit, and it's yellow, and then it matures. And once it's fully mature, what happens when a dandelion's fully mature? In our case, we get people who are far from God, people who've walked away from God. We get atheists, we get agnostics. We got people who are stuck in their spiritual journey. We got people who've been scarred and injured in their spiritual journey. We got people who are mature Christians who are just looking for we get the whole spectrum, and our job is we raise you up and get you mature, and a bunch of you, about the time you get really good and mature, Uncle Sam goes, and off you go to Belgium, where you now carry the seed of what God can do in somebody's life. And you go as a mature follower of Christ who's ready to make an impact wherever he goes. That's an incredible opportunity God has given this church. I mean, and the resources. I talk to people, I'm like almost embarrassed to tell people this. Oh yeah, what about oh yeah, somebody gave us 30 acres of land. How'd you earn it? Not a thing. Didn't do diddly squat to earn it. And God's done incredible. This is cool. This is so you guys can understand where the church came from. We're 12. We're 12 years old, coming up our 12th anniversary of our first service. And if you want to know where our first service was held, as a prop, the people over at Kegel Furniture have helped us out with a visual aid today. As you're going out, if you look past CVS, there's a tent set up there. See that tent? That tent right there? Okay. Imagine, now, go down to where our billboard is, just past on the south billboard, and the north-facing billboard, and there's a big empty field. Put that tent in that field on a day about as cold as this, and that was our first service. And we had 4 services in that tent 12 years ago in February, and we didn't fill it up any times. Look what God's done. It's called opportunity. It's called God blessing. It's called God saying, not God saying, here's your reward. Here's your opportunity. Here's your potential. Here's what I want to do through you as a church. All these people passing through who are far from God, all these people who are scarred, all these people who've walked away from church because church hurt them. Here's your opportunity. God's done incredible things. But there's a couple things we need to take into account. First thing you need to understand is turning that opportunity into actual success requires a commitment to the mission. Requires a commitment to the mission. If you notice that third servant, the one that got yelled at so bad, was he committed to the mission? No. He couldn't care less about the mission. The mission was, I want you to increase, I want you to act as me. Now remember, the guy who's acting as the master, he's representing God. And what the person had said was, I can't be here to take advantage of my opportunities. This is really what's happening. I will not be there to take advantage of my opportunities. I am entrusting you with my resources to take care of the opportunities. And the first two got it. Oh, you're going to be gone. We have a responsibility. Our mission is to take care of your opportunities. And they did. The third guy said, boy, that almost sounds familiar, doesn't it? The master's going to be gone. Who's gone? Oh, yeah, Jesus. And he said, these are the things I need accomplished. I'm leaving you responsible for the opportunities that come up based on what I've given you. And the third guy didn't get the mission. Now, what's our mission? It's helping you grow into the person God designed you to be. I've been saying this for years and years and years and years and years and years. For a while, for a long time, we said it in three phrases: help you connect with God, with others, the person God created you to be. Decided to shrink it down. Just make it one phrase. Same thing. By the way, you know how that differs from every other church's mission? It doesn't. Just how we say it. I mean, every church's mission is the Great Commission. It's Jesus saying, go into all the world and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them and teaching them to obey all that I've commanded you. That's everybody's. It's just we like to package it differently. You know, we all say something a little different. But it's every church's mission is to bring people to a relationship with Christ and advance God's work of reclaiming all of his creation. That's our job. That's every church's mission. And the only way you're going to do anything of value is to be fully committed to that mission. Now, you guys got a great example as you were coming in today. Did anybody notice it's kind of cold outside? It's just a touch on the chilly side, right? I want to commend all you Southerners who made it. Because I know this was hard for Northerners. And I'm a mountaineer, so I'm kind of in the middle, and it gets cold where I'm from, and we would qualify this as cold. Okay? So I commend everybody who made it out. You know who I really commend? The people who are so committed to the mission of this church that they put on a little vest over top of their coat, and they went out in that cold to make sure you found your parking space. Yeah. Thanks for that illustration, guys and gals. That was great. But that's just perfect, because you don't do that if you're not committed to the mission. If you're not committed to the mission of what God's wanting to do, if you don't believe God's going to change lives in his church, you're going to call in sick today. Right? That's the commitment to the mission. That's saying, I believe in what God's up to. Now, we're really going to dig into the mission in great detail next week. This is the first of a 4-part series, so we'll do into the next week. But I want you to see, that's the mission. And you have to have that commitment. But that's not the end of the picture. Because turning that opportunity into success doesn't just require commitment. It requires strategy. It requires a plan. You'll notice that the masters gave them 5 bags to do what with? Invest. You ever invested without strategy? Here's my money. I'm going to open up stockexchange.com or whatever, buystocksformyself.com, and I'm going to go alphabetically to the top stock, and I'm going to put all my money in it. Aardvarks Incorporated gets all my money because it's the top one, because I don't want, no, you know what that's called? Failing. Okay, that's called going broke. If you don't have strategy in your investments, you will lose lots and lots of money. Sometimes you do have strategy and you lose lots of money. But without strategy, you fail. Failing to plan is planning to fail. And there has to be a strategy. And so we can have a great mission and we can have great passion, but we don't have a strategy to fulfill it, we'll still not accomplish it. If you notice, Jesus sent out a bunch of his followers and said, I want you to go out and do some mission work for me. And he gave them really specific instructions. He even told them what to do for dinner. He really did. He said, go out, don't take 2 coats. If the town rejects you, do this. If you're staying with somebody, whatever they offer you to eat it. Tell them the good news. If they start rejecting you, go to the next town. He gave them really detailed strategy. The concept that God doesn't like strategy is just wrong. God's always doing strategy stuff. And we've got a real simple strategy here. We're not complicated, because complicated just doesn't work. And we start with a very, very simple concept. We've phrased it different ways over the years, but it's always been the same thing. And as we start with the concept of welcome home. You'll see it on our billboards. You'll see it on our T-shirts. What's that mean? that means when screwed up people walk in this place, they feel okay about it. That you go from zero to home here really fast. I get people all the time, let's say, Steve, I'll be talking to them, invite them to church, and they'll go, you don't want me in your church. You don't know what I've done. And I go, no, but I'd like to, because I'd like to see how you compare with our other people. My guess is you won't make our top 10. Man, we got people who have screwed up in some insane ways in our church, intentionally, accidentally. They got the stuff our people have done would make anybody blush, and that's just the elders. We're a screwed up bunch, and we intentionally, from day one, have made it so that it doesn't matter what you did in your past, you're welcome here. We love atheists. Love them to death. Well, I feel like I'm failing, and we're failing as a church if we don't have atheists coming here on a regular basis. If we don't have agnostics, we don't have people who've walked away from God. We don't have people that are ticked off at God. We don't have people who have been hurt by churches or have been hurt by life. If we don't have people who are so scarred, then we're failing. Because what we do is we create this place that you can bring your baggage and bring your scars and bring your questions and bring your anger and bring all that stuff with you and set it right beside you on the seat, and that's okay. Because you're welcome here. And we're not going to ask you on week one to make some big decision for Christ. We're not going to say today is the only opportunity, because it's probably not. God's let me live this long. He's probably going to let you give it another day. Be careful of your time. But so welcome home and take as long as you want to figure things out. Now, we are going to do this. That guy with the beard's going to get up, and he's going to talk about some practical stuff you can use in your life. And he's going to talk about Jesus, and he's going to try to show you that life with Jesus is better than life without Jesus. That's my secret sauce. That's all I really do. Okay? When I'm up here telling you how to make your marriage work, you know why I do that? So you can say marriage with Jesus works better than marriage without Jesus. When I talk about finances, you know why I do that? Because money with Jesus works better than money without Jesus. Okay? That's what I'm doing. Look, he's right on this, he's right on this, he's right on this. Guess what? He's also right about your soul. And eventually, what we want you to do when God has you ready, and we're not going to rush you. We've had people come for years. And an atheist came for 2 to 3 years before I was able to lead him to Christ. And some people are going to walk away before they do it, but I can't control that. Welcome home, and then eventually, we hope everybody makes a spiritual connection. Want to guess what that looks like? There's a reason I bring it up every week, because that's the point. Okay? We're not there's nothing necessarily wrong with, having a place that you go where everybody knows your name, you hang out, and it's cool. That's good, but I like something that points to something bigger, and we just say, okay, welcome home. When you're ready, we're here. When you're ready to make that spiritual connection, we're here. But we're not done when you make that connection. Because Jesus didn't say, go into all the world and make decisions. He said, go into all the world and make disciples. So there has to be, after the spiritual connection, there has to be spiritual development. Spiritual development is where you begin the hard work of growing into the person God designed you to be. And one of the things, we're making a number of changes in the church function. You're not going to see it much on Sunday morning, but in the way we're working behind the scenes to help people grow in that way. And one of them is we're introducing a 4-class system that we're going to start. Well, we're running trials on them this month. We're going to actually start them next month. And it's just really, we ask you to come on 4 Sunday nights in a row, if you haven't ever done it before. And the first class is about deciding. You can go put it up there. See the thing. And one of the things that we've never stressed, this is a big change for us, we've never stressed membership, because so often it's just your name on a list, and we don't really care about names on lists. But we do want you to be committed. So we're going to start stressing not membership, but partnership. And when we go to the first class, what we're going to do is say, here's who we are, here's what we do. Matter of fact, it's going to be a lot of the stuff I talk about this whole month. And in the end, we say, you want to be a partner? Not a member. You can be a member of Sam's Club. Okay, it's life-changing. But we want you to be a partner. I want you to be somebody that says, you know what, the mission that Spout Springs Church has, I want that to be my mission. The strategy, I want to be part of that strategy. I don't know what necessarily it looks like, but I want to be part of this. I want to be a partner. And the second week is where we discover, and in Discover, we're going to dig deeply into how you're wired, your gifts, your talents, your passions, your experiences, so that you know the next thing where we can develop you into a person who's ready to serve God. That's third week. And the fourth week, we actually deploy you into service. The fourth class, by the way, isn't even a class in the normal sense. By the third week, you'll have found out where you're best fit in the church. The fourth week, you'll go and get trained in it. Now, by the way, for those of you who've been through all these classes we've offered before, you've been a member for a long, long time, you don't have to go through the classes again, don't worry. I'll tell you about that later. Don't go, great, another 4 more classes for me. No. This is when people come in. We want to help you become. So that's the spiritual development. But the end result isn't spiritual development. I don't care if you finish the classes. I care if you deploy. Okay? Because the purpose of the church isn't to teach classes. I'm afraid an awful lot of times as Christians, we get to the point and what we're looking for is more and more knowledge. How can we gather more knowledge? How can we take more notes? How can we memorize more Bible books? How can we memorize more? How can we No. Jesus didn't say, go into all the world and make students. As much as I like to study, as much as I like to learn, that's not the point. The point is that we want to be making a global impact. And when I say global, what do I mean by global? See that door right there? Everything outside of there. Okay? Global impact starts here in our community. It starts in your neighborhood. It starts with you being a witness to your neighbors in the way that you live. It starts with being a witness where you work. It starts in doing all those things. It spreads into organized events throughout the community. It continues with us helping kids who wouldn't get Christmas, helping kids who don't have backpacks to take to school, giving them a backpack that's just packed with stuff. It continues with having neighborhood outreach events. It continues all the way out to Cambodia trip where we send 10 to 12 people to Cambodia every other year to work in human trafficking, where we're making an impact all over the globe, starting outside these 2 doors and going out. Does that make sense? That's our strategy. I like it. Because it lets people move at the speed God allows them to move. And one of the cool things about it is each piece leads to the next piece. Do you know where the global impact leads to? One of the things it does? It brings more people into the welcome home. Because as you're out there sharing the love of Christ, you're then invested in their lives, and you can say, hey, you know what? If you've got questions about God, I know this place that works on answering them. And where people come in. Okay? By the way, that was the quick version. I'll do better in 2 weeks. Because I got one more thing I want you to think about. One more thing I want you to see. And that's this. That committed, strategic action produces results. You should be able to see that committed action is working. There's evidence. You notice the 2 guys who came back with their silver. Here. They didn't come back and say, Master, I invested it. They didn't do that, did they? I invested it, and here's what came from it. Now, I don't mean we can come up with some formula that says if we do X and Y, then Z happens. But if you're doing the right things, you should, in general, get the right results. I guess a more important way to put it is, if you don't do the right things, you're not going to get the right results. Failing to plan is planning to fail, right? And so, matter of fact, those people there are people who don't think God strategizes. He does it all the time, okay? So, what's the evidence? Well, what would it look like if we're helping people come to spiritual connection? What are we going to see if people are getting connected spiritually? We already answered that one, right? There's going to be blue bags filled out, gathered. And what else? Baptisms. If we're helping people make spiritual connections, they're going to be grabbing these blue bags on the way out the door. If we're helping people make spiritual connections, they're going to get baptized as a first step of obedience, right? Now, what's the second? What's spiritual development going to look like? Well, that one's harder, but I've got a couple things, and I'm not going to spell them out because they're too long. That's a plus sign. We're going to have new people joining connection groups, right? Because nothing else, the new people who are coming in, if they're going, and some of you guys, by the way, need to join connection groups. That's a great place for you to start growing and developing. Another thing is we're going to be developing. We don't have it out. It's really close, though. I'm just going to call it a class. But it's going to be a basic Christianity class, probably built it around my book on Faith, Hearing, and Handwriting, about 4 to 6 weeks, where you learn the basics of what a Christian looks like. You learn how to pray. You learn how to read your Bible. You learn just the basic stuff. And if we're doing it right and we're pushing that class, what? People should attend, right? If there's nobody attending the class, right? There's nobody taking a blue bag. Nobody getting baptized. This is an embarrassing thing pastors do. Pastors get together. This is a dirty trade secret. And you can get 20 pastors in a room, and one of them will eventually, especially if they don't know each other, only know each other a little bit, conversation, I say, how's your church doing? And the proper answer is, we're growing. Oh, really? Cool. Now, that's everyone's answer. 85% of churches in America are not growing, okay, in any way that you can measure it. But we all say that because we don't measure it. See, if you don't measure it, you can say anything you want. You start measuring it, you're stuck. And if you come to me and say, Steve, did church grow last year? I would say, well, we grew in this area. We did not grow in attendance. We actually declined in attendance, slightly. But we did decline. We didn't have a growth year last year. If you want to ask me, I can tell you every year since we started what our percent growth or decline was, because I keep track of those things because I'm a math geek. Okay? We didn't have as many baptisms as we did 2 years ago, but it was okay. But there are results. There are things you can see. And then, how can we measure global impact? Are people doing stuff? Okay? Are people, I don't know, going to Cambodia? Well, yeah, we're sending 10 people to Cambodia. Are people giving out packing backpacks to give to kids? Yes. Are we providing Christmas for kids who can't afford it? Yes. That's easy to see if that's happening or not. And are they, and this is the big one, this is the other two big ones, are they doing things off-site, like I just talked about? Also, are they taking those step classes and then plugging into ministry? Again, I don't care if you take the classes. I care if when you finish the classes, you're involved in a ministry here. Okay? Because I've said this before. The Bible refers to the church as the body of Christ. Some of you are hands, some are feet, some are the mouth. Way too many Christians think their part in the body of Christ is to be the butt. I am spiritually the derriere. My job is to come to church and sit there. No. God's, don't take this wrong, God has all the butts he needs. Okay? So, welcome home, spiritual connection, spiritual development, global impact, things you can measure. And by the way, if you're doing all these things, the number of people who show up on Sunday is going to increase, not because we intend for it to increase, well, that's a cool thing, but because it's just a natural result of the other parts of it. People who are serving show up more often than people who don't. I can tell you there's people in this room who could testify to that very well. You were coming to church once a month, maybe less. You decided to be part of First Impressions, and they scheduled you twice a month, and now you find yourself coming 3 times a month. Maybe 4. And as you're doing more of these off-site ministries and you're showing more people the love of Christ, you're then able to say, hey, you want to come check out the church? And they just might. Now, what should we be looking for, though? Would it be wrong to say, you know, a church with our resources, with our potential, with our talents, with the stuff God's given us, what would success look like? I'm not talking about some big, hairy, you ever hear the thing, that big, hairy, audacious goals thing? Every once in a while I'll fall for that. Let's come up with this big, hairy, we should be da-da-da, and it's, 7 million people should be here by Tuesday. It's like, I don't like those. They just don't work for me. I like doing the right thing and letting God do what he's going to do. But I think if you're doing your part, God's going to do his part. And here's this, I'm just going to throw this out there, and you can take it or leave it, but I think these are reasonable standards. Not goals, standards. This is what a year should look like at Spout Springs Church. I think we'll start here. I think if we're doing what we should do, a church this size with our resources, if we are doing that, then in a given year, we should probably have about 100 people take blue bags and 100 people get baptized. That's reasonable. It's God, because our record's 84 baptisms, in case you're curious. Okay? But so it's not like crazy, but we can go at the end of this year and say, how close did we come to 100? And go, okay. Now, it's going to be tough to do all the numbers I'm going to give you this year, but they should be the standard. If we don't get them in 2018, we'll get them in 2019. Okay? How many people should be added to the connection groups? How many people should be starting and taking that discipleship class every year? I don't know. This is the hardest one to pick. But I think with all the people we have coming and going and all that stuff, I think 200 people joining connection groups in a year, I think that's reasonable. I think 200 people going through a discipleship class, that's aggressive but reasonable. How many people should be involved in off-site ministry? How many people should be graduating from our classes and stepping into ministry? There's a pattern. If you want to start guessing. Yeah, there we go. No, I think that's a good number. Actually, this year it's 290 because we're sending 10 people to Cambodia. Check those 10 off. The only thing with that number is I presented it last service, and I said, we'll provide Christmas for a family. And the people who lead those ministries are like, Steve, that's nothing. You got to up your game. So I said, okay, we've got to up the requirements. I don't know what the requirements are. But we're going to look at the end of the year and say, how close were we to having 300 people out of our church actively involved in something meaningful offsite, holding a neighborhood outreach in their own neighborhood, just that kind of stuff. Does that make sense? Wonder what would the result be here? Want to guess what I think would be a normal result from that? Yeah, this is for all you OCD people, so that there's a nice system and a rhythm. I could have messed you guys up bad and made it 399, and some of you have been twitching for the rest of the day. But as more people are coming, I think this is not, like I said, this is not big, hairy, audacious goals. These are targets. These are how we can look back at the end of the year and go, we did hit this, great. We didn't hit this, what do we need to do? What did we do as our part wrong? There may be times you do everything right and you don't hit those numbers. That's okay, we're not going to freak out about it. But it says this is something we're shooting for. Because we believe in the mission. Tim Keller had a great quote. I skipped it when I was supposed to give it, but I want to give it now because it's so cool. He said, the power of the gospel comes in 2 movements. It first says, I am more sinful and flawed than I ever dared believe, but then quickly follows with, I am more accepted and loved than I ever dared hope. That's what we want you to get. That's what we want the world to get. That's what we want the community to get. We want you to get that. We want you to understand. Now, usually I don't have to spend a lot of time telling you that you're screwed up because you got that memo, right? All you got to do is be honest with yourself and you go, I'm screwed up. The memo that so many people in this world are not getting is that you are more loved than you ever dared hope. And we take that message and we say, this is God's mission for us as a church, is that we want you to grow into all that God designed you to be. Not so we can have a big church, but it will be cool when God has a big heaven. It will be cool when you're walking down the street and you see people who used to be sad who are smiling. You see people who were hopeless who are now hopeful. And as I say, I may have hinted that this was coming. And as I remind you every week, if you've been coming a little bit and you've come to realize that you are more screwed up than you ever believed, but you're still more loved than you ever dared hope, this could be the week you need to grab a blue bag. This could be the week that you're ready to have that talk about having a relationship with Christ. And if you want that this week, the blue bags are right back there. You grab one. Somebody's been trained. It'll take 10 minutes and tell you how to have that relationship with Christ. And for some of you, you've heard me say this over and over and over again, and this is the week it's clicking. And this is the week you're going to walk back there. Okay? Now, it may be that you recognize that and you're ready to get baptized. Go into all the world and baptize people. So if you're you baptized, let us know. If you want to pray, we've got a cross over here. The purpose is a place where you can pray. If you want to pray with somebody, we've got some people on the outside love to pray with you. If you want to take communion, there's communion station, one in the back, one in the front, where you can connect with God there. Again, if you've been a part of this church for a long time and you want to be one of our partners, we're going to keep the forms out all month. You can just go back and grab them off wherever the form table is. Where are the form tables? It's over here now? There's one there too? Okay, they're both over here, one on each side. And just fill that out, give us information, be a partner. With great power comes great responsibility. With great opportunity comes great judgment, really. If you're in this room, if you compare yourself with the entire world, there are hardly any people in the world who have more opportunity than you do, who've been given more than you've been given. More privilege, more power. And with that, God expects great effort and great results. Of all the churches in America, of all the churches in the world, there are a handful who've been given more opportunity than this one. There are a handful who've been given a bigger door for effective ministry. A handful. God's not looking for perfection, but he is looking for passion. He's looking for commitment, and he's looking for results. In 2018, I want your personal results to be the best they've ever been, because you're passionately committed to living into all that God designed you to be. And in 2018, I want Spout Springs Church's results to be the best they've ever been. Not to glorify us, not to call attention to us, but to glorify God as we do all we can with all he's given us.